Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, the first question is, who are you and what is it that you do?
um, well, on a personal note, I'm Nick. I'm the COO at Space Ape Games. I haven't always been the COO here. Something I took over last year. Before that, I was very much in a technical role, looking after teams that ran the infrastructure here, so all the game servers and stuff in the cloud, as well as the IT team. So I've done a few bits, and I've been at Space Ape for 8.5 of its 10 years. We turned 10 last year.
And so, like, what's been the growth of Space Ape?
Well, over 10 years from from absolutely nothing to where we are now. I guess there's like a businessy story to tell where we for several games we sort of made Samurai Siege, which was a mobile game, and we just did like one team at a time, just kind of made a game, released it, and then built a new team, made a game, released it. And then we became like a multi-game studio around the time that we were acquired or went into partnership with Supercell in 2017. So long ago, it's crazy to think that it was that long ago, but we launched Fastlane around the same time. And then with kind of, I guess, we embarked upon a whole bunch of different things then, and then finally launched BeatStar last year, which has been a hugely successful game, really wonderful chance for us to showcase like music on mobile. And today we've got a whole bunch of stuff in development, and we're obviously trying to sort of shepherd BeatStar to bigger and better things. And I suppose as well, there's a culture story there where we grew from a very small team making Samurai Siege to, I think we're about 125 today. Context-wise, we have like a sort of fairly big office in Camden, just near Tottenham Court Road, New Oxford Street. And I think a lot of our journey has been about trying to maintain our culture through all these different things that have been thrown at us. Most recently, COVID and work from home and all these things. And I feel like actually we've navigated that pretty well. So we've managed to make a balance between people's passion for work and their families and their hobbies, and I feel that we're in probably the strongest place we've been regarding that. So yeah, pretty content.
And where does sustainability come in with the business journey? Was it right at the start, or did it come a little bit later on?
It came a little bit later on. I think one of the things I'm quite excited to see today is businesses that are young and that are starting out with those sustainability goals in mind. I don't think it was forefront of people's minds in 2012 to the extent that people would start a games business and be sustainable from day one, although I might be proven wrong by some smart folk out there. We started 2019 with this goal. John, our founder and CEO, just kind of just stood up and said, "Hey, look, one of our goals this year is going to be we want to go carbon neutral," was the words he said. And I think the problem we had at the time was that we had just no idea what that meant. I honestly, I'm still not entirely sure what it means, because everyone uses this nomenclature in the green space with like just kind of wild abandon, and it depends which kind of carbon neutrality. So we spent a bunch of time trying to understand, what that meant, looking around at these options, and we had some crazy ideas at the time before we really understood. Like, we were looking at it in the same way you might think about trying to bake a cake if you had no idea what the ingredients were or how you did it. We were just like, well, maybe we can just give some money to this NGO and then it will just magically, make our carbon. And no, it was a long journey of learning, and we enjoyed that. So I think the big learning for us in that first year was the mechanics of it all. And ever since then, the story has been one of appropriateness. Like we spend a fair amount of time, looking at this stuff and trying to understand it, and we just want to iterate to a better place each year. Just to kind of learn a bit more, see where we should be, make sure we're doing what we should be doing, commensurate with our passion for not being a net drain on the world, on the planet. And that's kind of where we're at, is like iterate. Our big next step change I'll probably talk about in a little bit.
Brilliant. What was the first initiative you implemented when you decided this back in 2019? What was the first thing that you decided to take?
Well, we had this kind of, I guess it came in three parts. One was now I know the word decarbonize. So back then it was like go carbon neutral. And so we did this whole bunch of stuff around measuring our carbon footprint, which is a lot of work to do the first time. It's certainly a lot of work if you're doing on your own without anyone to help in terms of consultancies or like people who've done it before. Mm-hmm. The other thing we did was we looked at some of the things MJ was talking about actually, which I thought were great, like things like these vegetarian food selections. One of the things we did, which maybe MJ can think on, is we so many people go out for coffee and they just bring back these like unrecyclable coffee cups. So we bought some like glass keep cup things, like these reusable keep cups, and we just kept them by the front door of the office. So now people like reduce their usage, and like we did a bunch of little things like that, and like addressed the recycling, made that like more visible, easier to use. It just a bunch of office stuff, but fundamentally, I think I tried to take this like again techie background, like try to take this like impact based view of things. I'm like, look, what's the biggest bang we can do with our time? Is probably measuring and removing the carbon from the atmosphere in the most effective way we possibly can. And that, for me, has been the thing that we've been focused on, especially as we went into lockdowns and all sorts. The impact of office-based interventions has greatly reduced. And I think MJ was right to point out, like, help people at home, help them understand, running your aircon all day in the summer or, heating all day in the winter might not be the best for the planet,
What would you say? I mean, obviously you've listed quite a few then. What was perhaps the easiest one for you to implement? Just thinking if someone wants to take these steps now, maybe follow what MJ said as well. What was the easiest thing for Space Ape to implement?
It is very easy to make like a bunch of small changes. So like I think being able to buy vegetarian food instead of just instructing caterers when they come in to do sort of events for us, hey look, we just want vegetarian. That's a super easy change to make. Like you don't really need to do very much there. But if we're talking about how in like terms of measuring our carbon footprint, there are some really easy things you can do to get like quick wins in there, which is like your building charges you for your electricity for sure, right? Like you can measure that quite easily. So you can do that, or even another easy one we did was like lobbying. I mean, this is just emails and shouting down the phone at people. You can lobby your building to switch to green energy. That's quite a good one. That actually had fruit for us because they turns out the building owners are kind of like want to do that as well. Like they don't want to be paying for like more polluting electricity. They've got that. So we had some synergy there, and we found like that they were willing to do it, and we got that done. And then folk at home, maybe again, this may be something we have to wait a little bit on because of this the sort of gas crisis, but we put together just a very simple spreadsheet with referral codes from all the Octopus and Bulb, RIP Bulb, but like all these different green companies that gave green electricity, and there was this like kind of win-win. So we just had like almost like a roulette wheel of just like randomly chose a code from someone's from someone at Space Ape's list of stuff. So there's some pretty quick wins you can get in there, but again, it's worth understanding it in the context of like reward and the benefit of this versus the effort of implementing it.
Did it ever feel overwhelming to sort of try and get all this together?
No, because we're a luxury place in the games industry, right? We don't have any real like compliance, but we got some. I'm not pretending, we got copper, we got GDPR, we got these things, but like we're quite free to do quite a lot of stuff without having to like show up in Congress or something and say what we did. So like I think with that freedom, like it feels like we can act quite quickly without having to spend years and years getting like AS 2060 certification for our carbon footprint and all this stuff. Like we can just do it, get it done, and just do the right thing and trust that we've done the right thing. And I think that has always left like not too much weight on my shoulders in terms of how I feel about this. The corollary of that is that, you know, you shouldn't crow too loudly about it. You shouldn't be like strutting around the street saying you've done everything, because you know, I think that's kind of greenwashy, right? And B, I think to do that, to like attach those kind of messages to you know, marketing and things like that, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't sit quite right with me. We're not here to make games seem green or greener than they really are. We're here to just do the right thing for the planet, and that should be just quietly conducted and with diligence.
And what do you believe in terms of sustainable game making is a factor that other studios might innocently overlook?
That's a good question. I guess I think one of them is what I just said around marketing. Like, I think you could easily be like, I'm going into this so I can be like, hey, look, we're so great, look at us. And like splatter it all over your products, or, you know, like carbon neutral and stuff. I'm so cynical about this stuff. MJ, I'm sorry, we use Amazon for our procurement for some stuff, right? Not a lot of stuff, but I hear you in the trying to find suppliers that work. And one of the things that Amazon's got on their website is this little green logo that's just next to some of the products, and it's just something like carbon something certified, and this is in their business portal. And I just started clicking through that to try and understand, you know, what was going on. Oh my god, it's that you just get lost in these mazes of like certification. Just, if you're starting out, don't try and make claims about your products. You'll get into trouble. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. Don't worry about the marketing side. And I think the other thing to know is you do need lots of caution. You do need a healthy cynicism, and you need to be able to get used to, I guess, the intangibility of everything in the carbon space. Like, it's a gas. I mean, it's already intangible, but like the kind of it doesn't really feel very grounded sometimes. You know, you look at carbon offsets. They're not a get out of jail free card. There's lots of reasons to be cynical about them. There was a great article recently from some reporting that got put into the Guardian around how many of these forestry products that are sold have not been you know, as good as claimed. And I would be extremely surprised if that wasn't the case for a whole swathe of things. You have to be careful and vet this stuff. And we heard this from Rhea earlier on, like, and these were vetted. So, you know, it's quite scary at times. So to go out there with a bit of cynicism, and think carefully before you jump, and look to others. Look, not me, for goodness sake, but just look to people like Microsoft and Stripe and people who've got like serious like weight behind their climate teams. Some really smart people working in these places.
You picked up on an interesting point there about the cynicism around like being carbon neutral. You even said you want Space Ape to go carbon negative. You know, have you had any backlash? No, we haven't. So I think nomenclature, once again, carbon negative and carbon neutral are just ways of saying, look, we've reduced our carbon footprint to a level where we to some degree, and what we can't reduce, we've offset using carbon offsets. And what you're talking about is a blog post we wrote in 2019 that I will once again promise for about the third public speaking thing I've done in a while, where I promise I will do an update to that, which gives like my, you know, with all the learnings from the last 4 or 5 years, where I can kind of maybe talk a little bit to that in that blog post. But carbon negative is simply buying, in this context, right? And in the way I used it, is simply buying more carbon offsets than you needed to. And we did that. We bought double the number. And part of that was like this sort of thought that, well, firstly, carbon offsets are like ridiculously cheap. They don't seem like they're expensive enough to kind of
be a suitable atonement for this crime of emitting carbon into the atmosphere. And so we sort of got a lot more. And I don't have any qualms over having done that in the past. Those are good projects that have lots of benefits for communities, outside of the mainstream of charitable donations and stuff. So I think this is just a mechanism for these projects to get off the ground. I think they're great. However, if you want to really be assured that the carbon is not emitted, I think it's a little bit looser and it's a little bit intangible. So I'm not comfortable these days with the kind of concepts of carbon negative. I think my barrier now, and I might be sort of eating from some of the things we might talk about later, but my keenness now is on carbon removal, which is a kind of carbon offset. Like, it's carbon removal, but this stuff's super futuristic. Like, it's 10 times to 100 times or more expensive than carbon offsets. And you have this kind of range of longevity of these solutions. Things like biochar might go for a few hundred years, and then you've got this like wild weathering projects that kind of will maybe tens of thousands of years for direct air capture and things like that. But then the price is all very different depending on this stuff. So, and it's future tech. Like, some of the stuff we buy is still not captured. It's like, we'll do that. We've got a lot of people want this. Like, we're going to do it, but it'll be like 2024, 2025. Like, we'll let you know. So I quite like that stuff. Like, it feels more tangible. I can look at, I know, sort of chemical reactions and the distribution of rock over large areas. It seems more tangible to me. It feels like you can look at it rather than polling a village to see how many are still using their finger cook stove after 5 years. I don't know.
So there's that concept of carbon removal. That's where Space Ape is probably looking as the next step of being that sustainable game studio, or is there other things as well?
Yeah. So our approach at the moment, and I've talked about iteration. So we iterated away from this double the carbon credits and say it's carbon negative thing, and we've moved to a portfolio of carbon removal and high quality forestry offsets, the sort of stuff that Microsoft and Shopify are investing in. The plan is, as the market and as the maturity of these carbon removal companies increases, we will increase the proportion of that portfolio that is carbon removal. So the idea is, and this is really this like net zero pathway. We haven't declared a net zero pathway yet, and it's something I'd like to do this year. But the ambition is essentially to kind of try and draw a line where we go, okay, this is going to be something that we can achieve by 20 whenever, and then draw a line in the sand and say, look, that's what we're gonna aim for. That is going to be largely dependent on the success of our suppliers in decarbonizing, because we're only 125 people. Like, it's all the people we buy from. It's the ad networks, which is just a big black hole of goodness knows what carbon emissions. It's the cloud companies that we use to run our service, who since we set out on this program have been so much better at dashboarding and showing you what the impact of using cloud is, which is great. It means we can see very clearly what we have left to offset or remove ourselves. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Small steps, isn't it? That's the thing. It's just doing it step by step, not trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah, I think as well, in terms of trying everything at once, there's a couple of other sort of, at least one other area, which is this, the Green Games Jam, which is like a Playing for the Planet game jam. In order to, I guess the gap is, game studios, operationally, we can do quite a lot to reduce our carbon footprints. MJ talked about a lot of ideas as well. It's great. There's so many things we can do. And it seems in our control, but our players is a much harder, it's a much harder proposition, because there's a dearth of really decent, highly successful narratives around, or mechanisms around, being good to the planet. There's some great games out there, that have approached it. But I think in order to try and insert these narratives into games where they might not otherwise exist. I mean, we make a music game. It's a challenge to try and find a hook to sort of build a green activation around. And then you've got this problem of when you've got these very, very broadly appealing games, a lot of people playing those games are going to be climate skeptics. And you need to understand, how do you approach this hugely broad swathe with a message that is not so watered down that that it's useless, but also impactful, but impactful enough to get. So like, how do you understand that in the context of your players? And I spoke to a studio a few years ago in one of the early game jams where their game was essentially very appealing to people who would typically be in a climate skeptic cohort, if you were to sort of take a guess. And so they were struggling with like, how do we do this? And they came up with a pretty cool solution. So there is all this. There's like, how do we get games to feel like they can be part of the solution as well as the operations of the studio. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be an exciting front to look at over the next few years.
And something I've just picked up on then was, you've gone out and spoke to people and people spoken to you, and it's, I'm guessing it's all about sharing that knowledge. And, if you're not sure, reach out for help kind of thing.
Yeah, it really is. I think so. There are so many people with so many like cool ideas, and I keep finding new ones. Like I thought, there's, sort of spoken to lots and lots of people, and there's more and more all the time who've just got these great new takes. And I think it's keeping it fresh, keeping the front of where good studios should be approaching, like keeping that moving forwards, keeping it advancing is important. And it's kind of the minute, what's the minimum that you should be doing as a games company to like hold the line, to make it clear that games in general are compassionate and caring about the planet. And I think that is important. In terms of reaching out and friend, there are like Ukie's got a green like a special interest group. There's a special interest group out of the US as well. And there's Playing for the Planet, which is depending on they've got like tiered memberships now, so you can get involved in that. And there's an incredible amount of knowledge there. Some very smart people, and that's backed by the UN. So you end up sort of bumping into sort of people that the UN have brought along, and there's some brains, there's some real brains in that outfit, and the UN is all about networking. Ultimately, it's a gigantic networking org, so it's quite interesting. And if anyone needs any pointers or anything, just reach out. I spend more time than I should chatting to people, just shooting it, and just kind of talking about this stuff, and I like to do it. And any way I can help you accelerate what took us a year of learning to get through, I'm happy to throw my hat in the ring.
And the final question is, what's next for Space Ape?
On the carbon front, I guess a net zero plan. I might need some help with that, because again, it's a lot of learning, and I learned things about net zero and like the science-based targets initiative, which is like one of the sort of key ways of using a framework essentially for sort of delivering it. You can't do that if you're owned by someone else, and it's the top company that does it. So like even just learning silly things like that, I'm like, all right, okay, what can we do? So there's that. And then in terms of the studio, we have a couple of games to launch. We've got one that's in soft launch if you're very eagle-eyed, and then another one really close to put in players' hands, but I'm not gonna share anything more on those just yet, but they're going to be really awesome, I hope.
So busy 2023 then.
Holy moly, so busy.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us for that. I do see that MJ has realized it's question time. Go on, MJ, with your question.
Sorry. Look, I'll be quick. My question is, I know that you've kind of grown quite significantly, and I was wondering, this is something that we're kind of facing right now, and I am very I'm not a fan of like, very quick growth, obviously. I wanted to kind of ask, how did you stay ethical, and how did you kind of stay, very connected to ethics while also having to grow and, kind of getting into like over 100 people?
You're lucky, because one of the answers is have a really strong leadership who believes in being ethical and maintaining the line on that. Hiring is important. I think if you are not keeping the bar high and making sure that people are aligned with these core values that you have, then I think you can run the risk of diluting that and finding pockets of folk who are maybe do you know the ORCART method? Like, if you've got an ORCART, right, that's the thing that you want to move forwards. You're pulling the ORCART with all your people, and they're all pulling the ethics and the green ORCART with you. And there's some people who don't really care too much, and they're like sat in the ORCART, and they're okay. You're just having to pull their weight as well. But then there's some people who are pulling the other direction, and it's those. So if you're hiring people like that and who really are resistant and might have comments like, well, maybe we should focus on, the business side of things before we focus on the green stuff or the ethics or the sustainability, then you've got a problem. And I think it's about finding that balance and making sure that people that you hire are cognizant of it and are on board with you.
Okay, I've got a question from Andrew. Got the full set now?
Yeah, on the world tour. Thank you very much for all that. That's very actionable stuff. Got one question for you and then one resource, because I like to give and take. So I'll start with a resource for a group that is kind of setting a great example for how are we scaling our sort of net zero ambitions while being owned by a giant company, aka Tencent. Sumo Group has a very, very hardcore sustainability group that is doing it right. So if you have any connections to explore there, I would highly recommend talking to them. And if you don't, I can try and get one for you. Awesome. And then question is on the net zero journey, trying to find what they're calling carbon accounting software. I'm looking at Ecology Zero right now, but the wait list is long. I don't know if you've examined that yet, but have you had any luck in a sort of tool suite for trying to even begin measuring this stuff? Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, all that stuff.
No, I built my own, and I am a fool.
Oh God, yes, you are a fool for doing that.
not like a tool. I mean, because all things I looked at some. They looked overwhelming at the time, and they looked very like Windows 95. They looked pretty archaic. And I just ended up collecting data, and obviously you collect data, it goes into a spreadsheet, and so now I have a 30-tab spreadsheet with different things. It works okay, but I'm the only operator that can really understand it, and I'm pitying the person I'm going to bring in this year to help me run some net zero stuff. But I'm sure they'll forgive me.
Okay. If you're not on the wait list for Ecology Zero yet, I would highly recommend getting on that. Your business is probably big enough to cut through the line as they're trying to bring on larger companies, 100 plus. And that is like Zero for carbon accounting. So it's presented more like an accounting software.
So that's like XERO.
XERO, that's the accounting software that everyone knows for just regular financial accounting, but Ecology is the company. Ecology with an I at the end is making their own software suite just for the carbon accounting side of things, but it's so long wait list.
That's cool. I think one of the reasons I didn't go too hard into the software side of things was that it feels like games has got a lot of bespoke stuff in it, and so I was really happy for the bespoke stuff to, like, for example, like measuring player energy usage.
Oh, it's impossible. You can't do it. It's not. This is for stuff like travel accounting and knowing how much that flight actually cost in carbon credit and that's pursuing carbon credits and things like that for just standard business stuff. But Scope 3 for players, like how much did their phone take? No, oh my God, it's so hard right now. I've got some papers I can send you from people who are writing all the white papers on this crap, and I can forward it along to you.
Playing for the Planet has got some resources on this. We did some measurements with Microsoft's Xbox Labs to kind of measure game use and stuff. So the data does exist. And Playing for the Planet has got something there. So if anyone's a member, you can probably have a chat about that. But yeah, like it's
hard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the question.
Thanks, Andrew. I've also got a question from Ria.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Hi, Nick. Thank you for sharing the journey. It's been fantastic. I learned a lot actually from you. You mentioned a quite, I would say, tricky part and when you talk about the gamers' activations. That sometimes when the gamers themselves might not interested in the green activation, or the game itself, the theme is not surrounded by the environment or this kind of fit theme. Do you see there's other ways that can encourage the gamers from a different angle? Because I think really the gamers are the valuable resources that the games hold the power, and like you said, that the games should always be compassionate and want to do good for the planet. So what's your view on that?
Yeah, I thought your question was going to be, why haven't you answered my email from last week? But I'll reply later. It was because I was writing some notes for this. Yeah, I think I mean, when you popped up with that question, I thought, that so Planet Play has this this opportunity to kind of allow. So the way I perceived it when I was sort of trying to work out how it would integrate with games like the ones that we have at Space Ape, was that you have this kind of idea of a currency, and I think that it's quite it's kind of opt-in. It's not in your face. It's not something you have to do, but you probably get a benefit for doing it. Like it might be a good one. It might be a really great bundle this week or something. So I always think I think there are lots of creative options, and I think the Planet Play is probably helping to open doors to mechanisms that people might otherwise not be considering. And I do think there is a risk within, exploring these green activations of just following well-trodden paths for generalized CSR type activities, right? Where corporate and social responsibility type activities, where people are just like, oh yeah, we just do a charitable bundle once a year for these guys, and that's it. That's all it is. So I think the integrations being deeper and more meaningful, I think is definitely the next step for this for sort of engaging our players more successfully. Because I think they react. Like if it's just a surface level thing, players know that, and they know if it's a more deep integration.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you for mentioning the email thing. We do have some update on the musician collaboration side. If you got a chance, I think we could take it offline. Yeah. Warner Music has been very keen to working with games and putting the green activation together. I think that could be a potential angle, like you said, that it could have a deeper meaning in it, not superficial. Yeah.
Cool. I'll give you a shout later. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick.
I think that's all the questions. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for that. I feel like so much has been spun off from this session. There's a lot of emails and off chats that's going to come from this, which is absolutely fantastic. It's what I love to see. But thank you so much to all of our speakers. And again, thank you so much to our partners, Barclays and AWS, for helping us to bring this to you today. I popped in the webinar. There is a learning session from the sustainability member group from Ukie. You don't need to be a Ukie member, but you do need to work in games. So please sign up with your work email just so we can keep track on that. But there's some more speakers in that. All the details are in the Eventbrite if you want to sort of carry on with this sustainability talk and chatter. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Please join us for more hub crawls. We've got 2 more coming up, developing games with cloud software. And also we're up in Belfast on the 9th. So if you're from Belfast, certainly come along to that. It was a good one last year. It should be another good one again. Okay, thank you so much. And I will say night. Thanks, everyone.